And I'm live. Hello, once again, Gordon Causey, as it always is. And anyone who's been on the channel before knows who this is. It's Candy the Wonder Dog, who is jumping all over me because I have been trained. Candy has trained me that at the start of every live video, she gets a treat. And that's what's here. So I'll take care of her and then we can get rolling. Shake, wait, speak. Good voice tonight. And there she goes. Have my coffee. Sorry for being a few minutes later than I had scheduled this. I set it up to start at 10:45, but as is so often the case, life gets busy. A little brief intro. Gordon Causey, 50, going to be 59 soon, born in 1966, ex-military. I'm wearing an old regimental, if I can get my hand over the right spot, an old regimental t-shirt from Belcartier, where I was posted in 2011. That this is HQ in SIGS, or en français, QGET, Quartier Général Escadron des Transmissions. The joys of being an Anglophone posted to Quebec, I became relatively pretty much fluently bilingual. Not native fluency, obviously, but I get by very well en français. Anyway, what are we going to talk about tonight? The date is Saturday the 14th, an important day, 2025. And there are a few things to get through tonight. I see that no one's watching at the moment. We'll see if anyone comes on. People usually do. I hope there's some engagement tonight, but if not, oh well. If you do come on late, and you're catching up, I would appreciate in the live chat if you just put down where you're from. Canada, the US, what province, what state, or if you're international, what country you're in. I'm not going to be speaking French. I've done a few videos in French, but it's not my native language. I do not have, as I say, native fluency. So the big news, obviously dominating the world stage right now, is what's happening between Iran and Israel. Israel launched a massive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Natan, I think, is the name of one. Apparently, massive destruction, at least at the above ground level. Goodness knows how deep it goes, how much damage was done underground. Um, Iran has retaliated with drones, missiles, rockets fired at Israel in the, I believe, 100 plus. There's talk now that there could be a three-pronged attack coming at Israel, and from Yemen, from Iraq, and from Iran itself. And I forget how long ago it was when there was this missile exchange going on before. Uh, after Israel had reached deep into Iranian territory and destroyed some of their air defense systems, taken out military commanders, um, I was equating what was going on to a jab that Iran, it struck me, was jabbing at Israel with drones and with missiles. And what they were doing was testing Israel's response, testing their capabilities, and thinking more on it. How much intel, how much intelligence did they garner from those earlier barrages? Did they learn anything? Did they learn, well, if we target a specific area with 10, they can shoot them all down. 15, they can shoot them all down. But if we go over 15, they that overwhelms the Iron Dome and David's slings and the interballistic missile defense systems that Israel has. And this is going to get bloody. I've got Danny has shown up, my friend from Montreal, Montrealais, who speaks French better than I do. But he lives there. I haven't lived in Quebec since 2015, so French goes down. At any rate, and it strikes me that war in today's modern world, you used to see ground troops, you used to see infantry, artillery, um, armor, tanks, and you have battlefield positions, and armies would take one another on. Now, in the modern era, it seems we're into the age of missiles, drones, and rockets, and everything is being. Goodness knows what's going to happen. Apparently, now the fog. There's something referred to as the fog of war, and it's a long stated truth of war is that the first casualty of military conflict is truth. And so you have to be very circumspect about the reporting that's out there. We're all seeing the reporting. We're seeing Israel saying that it targeted military and nuclear assets and that they were not. This is what Israel is saying. They said they were not attacking the civilian population of Iran. By contrast, Israel is saying that Iran is indeed targeting civilian populations, principally in Tel Aviv, the capital city, or rather, I should say, the main city. The capital of Israel is Jerusalem, but Tel Aviv is the New York City, the Paris, the Toronto of Israel. And Israel is claiming that Iran is attacking civilians. Now there's talk that Israel is going to be targeting Tehran, which is the capital and largest city in Iran. Hank Holiday is here calling me G-Man. Betty Zoom has shown up from Niagara. Um, Appreciate you throwing that down there. If you guys, Danny and Hank, wouldn't mind just, throwing Texas and Montreal, I am led to understand that that pushes the algorithm and that the live stream is then will show up in other people's feeds who are in those geographic areas. That's my understanding of it. I don't know if that's empirically true, but it's what I hear. Anyway, what is going to happen in this war? Goodness knows. If we get Yemen involved, who knows who else will be involved? I'm led to understand that within Iraq, Iran has military assets. It has allied groups within Iran. So there's talk that Israel could be facing a three-pronged attack. Israel is a nation of only in and around 10 million people. However, if you include the people who live in Gaza and who live in Judea, Samaria, who are not Israeli citizens, I'm talking about the Arabs who call themselves Palestinians in Gaza and the western bank of the Jordan River, then you're getting up in around 15 million people. And when you're looking at Iran, Iran is in and around 90-ish million people. It's almost a 10-to-1 imbalance. And then you throw in so many other countries in the Arab world. Israel is, would there ever be a ground invasion? Would they send troops? The one thing is, it's widely acknowledged, although Israel has never admitted it, Israel is regarded to be a nuclear power. Now, again, they've never openly admitted being a nuclear power, but it's pretty much acknowledged by everyone in the world that Israel has nukes. And is that going to preclude nations like Iran from seeking alliances and going in and attacking directly with boots on the ground is the typical name for it. I like what Danny, or rather what Hank Holiday is writing. He's writing Ezekiel 38:39 begins. This is the Ezekiel 38:39 war where, Gog of Magog, Prince of Mashal, and all this. And I've always taken a 100-mile view up on biblical prophecy because who's to say who Persia is clear, that's Iran. But when it comes to Gog of Magog, is that Turkey? Is that Russia? No one knows for sure. You'll have differing opinions out there. but I just take a look from 100 miles up, and what I see is Israel being surrounded by armies, and probably could be Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, goodness knows, and surrounding the nation state of Israel. And that's the Ezekiel 38-39 war that you hear so many speak of. And this is all happening at a time. Now, the Israel has one major ally, and I've spoken of this before as well, is my anticipation that dominoes are going to start to fall. Israel, of course, is allied with the United States. The United States is part of NATO. So what happens? Israel goes to war with Iran. The United States gets involved. Well, Iran is allied with Russia and China. Iran has joined the what is called the BRICS coalition: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And are those nations, are BRICS allied nations, going to get involved on Iran's side? And once the dominoes start falling, that's when it looks like we're into an Ezekiel 38-39 war. That's when it looks like we're into a global conflict. And the thing is, the other major news from today, of course, is the no kings protests that have been taking place across cities in the United States. I tried to get caught up on them as much as I could. I wasn't able to glean much. It looks like, from what little I've seen, is that for the most part they were peaceful protests. I didn't see any of the LA style rioting, cars burning, looting that has been taking place in Los Angeles. Uh, and Betty Zoom is saying, wow, it's a madhouse out there in LA. Yes, in LA, it's a madhouse. But in the other places, Chicago, New York, Dallas, there were no Kings protests happening all over. And it looks like, for the most part, from what I've been able to see, I finished work this evening at 9 p.m. So I've been catching up furiously on the news, and there's just so much out there, because then you also had this parade going on to celebrate Flag Day and the 250th anniversary of the United States Army. And so what it speaks to me is that the United States is so much a house divided. It is incredibly divided, the Americans are. We are in Canada as well, but I don't think it's as bad here as it is down in where Hank Holiday lives, down in the United States. And it's right versus left, it's urban versus rural. Where these protests seem to be happening are in the major urban centers. And even a red state like Texas, when you get into cities like Dallas, like Houston, that tends to be where the Democrats do best. They do best in the large urban centers, whereas the Republicans poll much better in the suburban rural areas. And you talk about an incredibly divided country, and if you're going to war of any shape or size or description, any war, you're going to want to be united. There's always going to be factions, there's always going to be groups, but broadly speaking, you want 8, 9 out of 10 people all marching in the same direction. In the US right now, half are pulling one way, half are pulling the other. The LA riots are based on ICE enforcement of US, I'm going to say American sovereignty, trying to remove people who entered the United States of America illegally. And Donald Trump campaigned on that, and he won a significant mandate. He won the popular vote. He won the electoral college vote. He won all the important swing states. So he has a mandate to do what he is doing. And there's a large segment of the population, though, probably close to half, who don't like it, who don't like what he is doing, but you lost the election. And they don't like the fact that they lost the election. And so now they're protesting. I thought Donald Trump's remark with respect to when what are they calling it? No kings? What? Yeah, I mean, seemed he acted like it was the first he was hearing of this no kings, and he understood the implication. He said, I have to go through hell and back just to get anything passed. He's battling with the Senate, with the Congress, with the courts. He's not acting with dictatorial. He has a mandate from the people to enact an agenda that will secure America's borders and remove those who entered into the country illegally. And then you have the Nancy Pelosi's of the world saying, "But who's going to pick our crops? Who's going to do all the menial, coolie labor jobs?" And I use that term on purpose because that seems to be the way that so many on the left side of the aisle talk when they talk about immigrants and visible minority populations. They seem to look upon them as, the coolie labor. And that's an old antiquated term, probably going back to the 40s or 50s. Fill up the live chat, guys. Um, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. Hank is writing on another topic. You guys have to look up videos on YouTube called AI videos, VEO3, hyper realistic. We are cooked. Satan and the government has a new tool of lies. There is a guy named What Do You Meme? I think everyone on my channel knows What Do You Meme? Great content. Absolutely love his content. Nothing bad to say about that gentleman. I don't even know his name, just the name of the channel. What Do You Meme? And he did a stream recently where he interviewed ChatGPT or Grok or one of these AI um, manifestations, and he had his cell phone hooked into chat gpt or whatever with a microphone in front of it, and he was interviewing it on how you would bring about the destruction of the United States of America, and how you would try to infiltrate Christians, how you would try to deceive Christians, and had some very interesting answers. I'm not going to give any spoilers on it. Give that a look. That guy he does an incredible job. And Betty is saying, with respect to Pelosi, Nancy, she's still hanging in there. Unbelievable. And so my biggest concern right now is that we are heading to war. I think, I don't know how quickly, I don't know how fast things are going to progress, but I think we've been seeing a progression ever since October 7th, 2023. We've been seeing a progression over the past year or two. And now things are escalating. They go, it's not a straight line. It's escalation, calms down, escalation higher, calms down, escalation even higher. And we're in an escalation period definitely now. And I just think it's a matter of time. I think Turkey is something of a wild card in all of this. So probably in NATO, it has the second largest army in NATO after the United States of America. Turkey is a formidable military power. And Erdogan, however you say his name, I believe I'm pronouncing it well, or Erdogan, the G in the Arab language is not pronounced the way we pronounce it in English. Anyway, Erdogan is getting up there in years. Is he going to die soon? And then what happens when he's replaced? Where will Turkey's allegiances land? Will they? Right now, they are a member nation state of NATO, but will that remain? Goodness knows. And Canada, my home and native land. Oh, Canada, my home and native land. That's what it says in our national anthem. We're, we're wide open immigration. It's insane the numbers of people that are being allowed into this country. at a time of economic uncertainty. And I mean, there's some my brain has been going off. I was talking today with a young lad at work, 25 years of age or so, and he's very left. He's a sharp kid, but he's very left wing, and he has no issue with all the burning cars or anything like that. He says, "Who cares? It's just personal property. We're talking about people's lives here. Don't go into a country that doesn't, if you're having to enter the United States illegally, you shouldn't be going in." Um, and Betty's writing that she wonders about our native land. The U.S. is more divided than more overtly divided than Canada. Canadians, we tend to keep. We are not as boisterous. We are not as we don't wear our hearts on our sleeves the way that Americans do. But and that goes for both the right and the left. Everyone, Canadians are polite. Well, I think we're going to come to a period where politeness is not going to cut it anymore. We're going to have to be bold. And do I see Canadian society, American society coming together, uniting to fight a common enemy? No, I do not see that happening. I think the Chinese have embedded themselves heavily in our politics, in the culture wars. I think this whole DEI and transgender stuff and all this other destabilizing dialogue that happens in the West, I think a lot of it comes from China. They planted the seeds, and now those seeds are being fed, watered by just malcontents. Uh, Danny's saying we need to stop being so PC, politically correct in Canada. No kidding. Uh, what do you guys think? I'm anxiously waiting in a fashion, anxiously waiting. Rip the band-aid off, immediacy bias. Let's get on with it. I it make the war that's happening between Iran and Israel makes everything else seem like a secondary sideshow. One of the secondary sideshows is that Robert Kennedy Jr. has just fired the vaccine advisory panel for the CDC or the FDA, I forget which, but there's a panel that is put in place by Health and Human Resources, whatever agency, the health department that RFK Jr. is leading up right now. And he's fired everyone who's on that advisory board that makes recommendations with respect to vaccines and has replaced them. So far, he's replaced them with 12 names, which apparently isn't enough. He needs more. Well, one of the names is interesting, Dr. Robert Malone. And the reason it's very interesting to me is I actually spoke to that man. And I'll share the link with you now if anyone wants to watch. It's a couple years ago where a buddy of mine had me on his podcast as a guest. I used to co-host with him, and we'd interview people. And one of the people that we interviewed was Robert Malone, who holds somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 patents on mRNA technology. He worked at the Salk Institute, and you don't get to work at the Salk Institute unless you're a bona fide genius. And it was a very interesting conversation that we had. Well, it's got to be coming up on 2 years ago now, and um, it was very edifying for me because it was good to see someone with that background, with that level of intelligence, who at times was willing to say, sometimes we do not know. Sometimes you do not know the answers, and he was humble enough at times to admit that he didn't have all the answers on things. So I like what Danny is writing. Jesus is king. And let's see, I've got a few more comments coming up on. Danny saying they want the West to be destabilized. They need America to fall. The United States is the predominating economic and military power in the world right now, with China coming up hard and fast. And before China can take over, they need the US to fall. And the US is not going to go silently into that good night, certainly not under Donald J. Trump. And so that's a recipe for conflict. And right now, if you think about it in a way, Iran and Israel, in a fashion, can be viewed as proxy forces. Israel could be seen as a proxy force of the American empire, of Pax Americana. So Israel is the US, the United States proxy, and Iran is a proxy of Russia, China. So rather than the United States going up directly against China, Russia, they're having their proxies fight it out. And then their proxies have proxies. Iran has its proxies of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and Islamic Jihad and others. So, anyway, Drew Coover. Oh, Drew from Vancouver is on. We need to join the USA and get rid of the transparent order MB1, collect our stuff and build. Amen. I'm in agreement with you, but ours is not a popular view. There's a lot of latent Canadian patriotism under the surface, and a lot of Canadians do not like the United States of America. Let's just be honest about it. There are a lot of Canadians who have a deep distrust, mistrust, and almost borderline hatred for the United States of America. And Mark Carney tapped into that in our most recent election. It is there. There is a strong anti American sentiment. This notion of the colonial West, the imperialistic West, imposing its will in various differing parts of the world, and that the world would be so much better if America would just back out and just stop trying to be. Well, the thing is, if the United States were to back out and were to, not be the dominant world player, does that mean that no one else would go into the Middle East and muck around? China would be there in a heartbeat. They would be messing around. And people seem to think that the Middle East is such a mess because of these imperialistic, colonialistic little battles between varying empires and things, and the British and the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese. And if we would just leave people to their own devices, if we just back out, everything would be peaches and cream. But look at the history of the Arabian Peninsula. Turkey was in the Middle East, is in the Middle East, and Turkey was the dominant power. They were dominating that part of the world. And before Turkey, the tribes on the Arabian Peninsula, the Hashemites and the House of Saud and various other factions, were fighting each other. Muhammad, founder of the Islamic faith, was a warlord. And you think there would be peace in the Middle East if all of a sudden the United States and all the colonial powers in the world just backed out and just left them? No, they'd be fighting each other. So, anyway, uh, I've got Miss Hellraiser is here. Good evening. To saying good evening to me and everyone. Danny's writing that during the Second World War, I believe a Japanese general said, "We will never invade America because there are two rifles behind every blade of grass." Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, giving American citizens the right to bear arms. And home field advantage is something that is huge. That's something Great Britain learned during the American Revolutionary War. They had Hessians, they had regular troops going up against a bunch of farmers and a bunch of tradesmen. blacksmiths and that, militia, not professional army. And Britain, the world's dominating military power at the time, was defeated. Now, America didn't defeat them all by themselves. They had help. They got help from the French. They got help from the Spanish, because France and Spain had no love. There was no love lost between those empires. And so when the Spanish and the French saw that the Americans were giving the Brits a go, well, they started to throw in with some naval support and some military support. Lafayette. Anyway, uh, and Miss Hellraiser is 100% with becoming American. Wouldn't be that difficult for me. I mean, I spent grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. We still said that back when I was in school. Indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. My country, 'tis of thee. That was our morning exercises. Drew is saying that Carney destroyed the Canadian flag. I would like to choose to believe that it is not fact. We love the USA. It's just the small group that hate Trump. We all love Americans, and Americans love us. Oh, I remember years ago there was a comedian named Jeremy Hotz, very funny, and he did a routine in which he said, "Americans don't have a clue about us. They think we like them. They think we're nice." And there is an underlying. I kind of equate it to Canadians are like the youngest in the family, and the United States is the hyper successful big brother. And there's Schadenfreude, the joyful pleasure in someone's misfortune. We love to see the Americans fall. We love to see them fail. In Canada. I'm not talking about me personally. I'm just talking about there's a pervasive element within the population that genuinely likes to see the United States fail because, ha ha ha, you know, you're so big, bold, bragacious, beating your chest, and now you got humbled. Ha ha ha. And Canadians, we like to think we're smarter. We have this smug, condescending, arrogant bent to our collective national personality. I don't know. It's there. It is there. Everyone's saying hi. Miss Hellraiser said, my husband and I started a business and we're hoping to move to the USA next summer. I served in the military with a guy. Oh, trying to remember his name now. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he left the military. He was in Quebec. Chris was his name. Cucci. Great name. It was that was part of his last name, Cucci. Anyway, he started a business in Quebec making honey infused beverages like mead and honey infused beer, I think. And he was producing it and making it and distributing it in Quebec after he left the army. He started out as part time, and then he decided to go full bore. He got some investors, and he found it was just too problematic, especially in Quebec. Quebec is the worst in terms of overregulation and government tentacles everywhere. So he went and he established himself down in the United States, down in Texas, and I can't remember exactly where in Texas. We haven't talked for a while. Um, but it's insane what is happening in the world right now. Is there anything else in the news? There were two legislators in the state of Minnesota, and I think two or three individuals were shot. And one is the former Speaker of the House legislature for the state of Minnesota, a woman. I think it was her and her husband were shot, and they were Democrats. And when I read that this morning, I was like going, "Oh, great! Now, this will be a black eye for anyone who's on the right. But as it turns out, they say that the prime suspect, who I think they've got some form of highly credible proof about the individual who they say did it, and it turns out that he was appointed by former Governor Waltz and a Democrat, and that this individual was found to have no king's paraphernalia in his vehicle. And so now it looks like you've got no idea in today's world what's real and what's not, what's propaganda, what's genuine reporting. And it's so difficult to navigate this world. And all it speaks to me is the fact that the United States is crumbling from within. The right and the left are cannot stand each other. There's no common ground. It's the American Civil War all over again, when the North went up against the South. And in that war, you had brothers killing brothers. And, you know, that's the way it is now between the right and the left in the United States. You would think with Israel being under attack that uh, you would think, I would like to think, that Americans would rally behind their Israeli friends. But the thing is, Jew hatred, hatred of Jews and all things Jewish, is so rampant globally that there's a large segment of the population that has bought into like the protocols of the elders of Zion and stuff like that. And you talk about a great psyop right there. That protocols of the elders of Zion was a great weapon of those who wanted to destabilize, who hate Jews. I don't use the term anti-Semitism. It's not the best term. I know what it means. I know how it's used. I know the accepted form of it, but there's always some smartass in the back of the room who says, well, Semitism refers to a language group, the Semitic language group, and Arabic is actually a part of the Semitic language group. So I know, shut up. Hatred of Jews and all things Jewish. That's what I call it. Miss Hellraiser doesn't identify as a Canadian anymore. Koj Malik is here. Anything happening? That Koj Malik is down in Florida. Did anything happen with the no more? I keep wanting to say no more kings, because when I was growing up in the 1970s in New Jersey and later in Oregon, Saturday morning TV had this thing called Schoolhouse Rock, and they would give you little bits of American history. And one of their cartoons was called No More Kings. And, it gave a very brief history of the United States right up to the Revolution, rocking and a rolling, splishing and a splashing over the horizon. What can it be? The pilgrims set to sea to find a new home, a new land of their own. On their ship Mayflower, they thought they'd find a better home. They finally knocked on Plymouth Rock, and someone said, we're there. It may not look like much, but at this point, I don't care. All they were missing, Mother England. They swore their loyalty until the very end. Anything you say, King, it's okay, King. Anything you say, King, we'll obey. Gonna build a new land the way we planned. Will you help us run it till it's grown? They planted corn, they built their houses one by one. And bit by bit, they worked until the colonies were done. They looked around you up and down, and someone said, hooray. If the king could only see us now, he would be proud of us today. And when you get to the end of the little song, 2-3 minutes long, they say, they defeated the British Empire. And they said that now we'd run our own land. It's time for us to take a stand. Uh, uh, it's very clear you're being unfair, King. No matter what you say, we won't obey. Gonna have a revolution now, king, and we're going to run it all our way with no more kings. We're going to elect a president. No more kings. He's going to do what the people want. No more kings. No one's going to push us around. No more kings. That was the end of and it's called No More Kings. Check it out on here. Um, kind of American history simplified for a 6-year-old. Um, the thing is, there's that word we. I mean, every kid my age growing up in the United States would have watched that. And, we're going to elect a president. They did, Donald Trump. He's going to do what the people want. Well, what do you do when the people want different things? When you got half the country or close to half the country saying, hey, let's let everyone in. Let's just have wide open borders. And you have another half of the country that's saying, no, we don't want wide open borders. We want citizenship to mean something. We want residency to be only to people who are allowed legally into the country. So what are you going to do? How are you going to solve this problem? This Hellraiser says the pandemic was Pandora's box. Everyone knows the story about that box, that all the evils in the world, once it got opened, you can't shut it back down. Uh, I think what COVID did was it just laid everything bare. I think most of us, myself certainly, I was, happily going around numb, living my life, going on vacation, going to work, family, this, that, and the other thing. And then COVID came along, and I was gobsmacked to see the number of people who would just blindly go along with whatever they were told without any questioning, without any thought. We put stickers on the floor. That's my favorite euphemism for someone who just blindly accepts whatever they're told. Well, the stickers say to go that way. Why? I don't question anything. I mean, gosh, at work today, I'm noticing there's still people wearing masks, 2025, still wearing masks, still with that same look of dull, empty-headed fear in their eyes. And it's crazy. Uh, and then Koji Malik is writing, and she's putting quotes around it. So, democracy is a nice social experiment. You have to wonder, are we seeing the death of democracy? Democracy in the United States was regarded as embarking on an experiment when they, you know, signed the Constitution and the articles of what do they got? The Federalist Papers, where they argued about how to sort this all out, because it had never been done before, not certainly not on that scale, and it was seen by a lot of the world as an experiment. Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a French nobleman, came over in 1804, 1802, during Thomas Jefferson's time as president of the United States. He came over and he wrote a famous book that's still studied today in political science classes called Democracy in America. And he wanted to see, firsthand what this experiment in democracy was. But the thing is, the way democracy was back at the founding of the United States and the way it is now, completely different. Voting rights, women were not voting. And as a matter of fact, I think at its inception, the only people allowed to vote were landowners, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, we've just kept expanding, 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 expanding. And now in Canada, the United States, like in Canada, we have people voting in our federal elections who don't even know who the head of state of Canada is. They couldn't name, 5 capital cities of our provinces. They have no idea what year this country was founded in. They think that the prime minister has a veto over any legislation. They think we're America, and yet they're still allowed to vote. It's unbelievable. Uh, Miss Hell, I don't know what Betty is saying by clap. Two things come to mind. One requires penicillin. Miss Hellraiser is writing, democracy has been a delusion from the start. Nothing more corrupt than government. You know, one of my favorite quotes, not mine, I don't know who said it originally, but it's that democracy is the worst form of government with one notable saving grace, and that is that it's better than all the alternatives. Yeah, democracy sucks, but would you rather live in a dictatorship? I mean, I think it's long been said that the ideal form of government is a benevolent dictator, but there's no such thing as a benevolent dictator because power corrupts. Everyone thinks, well, if I was in charge, if I was running the world, then everything would I would not be corrupted. Yes, you would. Everyone gets corrupted. Koji Malik is writing that democracy will exist in the US as long as white people are at the top of the hierarchy. Well, that this is something that surprised me, but I had grown up with the assumption that the population of Black Americans, I thought it was 25%, but from what I understand, it's only in and around 12 to 16, somewhere, in and around there. And I found that very surprising. And so obviously, if you're living in a country that is, 60, 70% white, well, whites are going to dominate. If you're living in a country that's predominantly black, blacks are going to dominate. I mean, anyway, um, Cryptomeria is here and writes, I identify as a lump. Hope things are going all right for you, Cryptomeria. I know Cryptomeria has some challenging circumstances. And Koji Malik, you seem like you're in a agitating mood. Is writing, religion is a runner-up against democracy. Uh, Betty's, oh, my song, not my song. Schoolhouse Rock. Anyone else remember that? Koji Malik, you might remember it. They had a lot of things. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? That was one. Then they had, math, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, counting by fives. It was well done. Let's see what Koji Malik is writing. Expediency is the mere shadow of truth and the beginning of chaos and disorder. Platitudes, Koji Malik. Come on, I'm taking, you're putting these in quotes, so I take it, it's, give me your own thoughts. Don't just, we all love these platitudes, these sayings that belong almost like in a Hallmark card, but doesn't mean they mean anything. And Koji Malik is giving the number as 13%. And it was in that range, but I always thought it was significantly higher, but it's not. But Koji Malik is writing, by 2045, it's not supposed to be 70% white. It will be less than 50% white. That happened in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and it probably happened sometime in around the 90s. And what happened was sometime, I remember it was reported on in the press that the city of Toronto, that there was no longer a majority population, that whites constituted the single largest minority, but that they were now less than 50% of the population, white European Canadians living in Toronto were less than 50%. They were still the single largest minority, but now it was a question of differing minority groups. You had Asians, Southeast Asians, Chinese Asian, uh, you had individuals, black, and various other groups. I wish we could get past a point where we identify ourselves by the melanin content in our skin, but it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Uh, I don't have much else to say. It's just uh, throwing out there the fact that the United States and I don't think there's anything that can be done about it. I do not think there's any remedy to the situation. I think the differences have been so embedded that "Burn, baby, burn" is gonna be the new motto in the United States of America in the coming months, years. Who knows how long this will last? And it's coming at a time when the world is heading toward global conflict. And can a divided United States of America stand? If it's not united, there's a movie that's coming out or came out last year talking about different factions, a new civil war in the United States, and different groups all going to war with each other. Uh, let's see, what's Coach J. Malik writing? POC aren't responsible. I don't know what POC stands for. Um, oh, people of color aren't responsible because white people aren't, or something about babies. The US answer is to abuse people of color because they can't procreate, because white people can't or won't procreate. I think it's a question of won't. The birth rate in the United States, the fertility rate is below replacement levels. Canada, it's horrible. The entire Western world has the only exception to it is Israel. Israel is the only country in the Western world that has a significant enough birth rate, fertility rate to actually grow its population without having to rely on immigration. And that is even without the ultra Orthodox. The Orthodox communities in Israel have a huge birth rate, but even when you take them out of the equation, Israelis still have enough children to more than replace themselves in the population and to grow the population. Canada, Western Europe, the United States. It's better in the US, but it's still not 2.1 is what you need. The fertility rate in a country needs to be 2.1, and then the population will maintain itself. But if you're below that, and I think Canada, we're like 1.4 or something like that. I think the US is better. I think 1.6, maybe 1.8, but it's still not replacement level. And why is that? A lot of reasons. There's no one single reason why. But I've spoken about it on this channel before, why people don't have kids in the Western world. One of the reasons is because um, we don't need kids to express our identity. People express their identity by saying, "See that house? I live in that house. See my car? That's my car. Look, here, I'll show you my pictures of vacation. I went to Aruba or wherever. Went to Paris. See, and this becomes an expression of a person's identity. And when you can do that when you live in an affluent country, when you're not living in an affluent country, if you're in a impoverished nation, if you're sub-Saharan Africa or in India, rural India, well, how do you express yourself to the world? My name is, Ginwar, and these are my 12 kids or my 14 kids. So that's one reason. Uh, Another reason is cost of living in the Western world, level of taxation. It's very pricey to have kids. And so a lot of people say no. DINKS, it was a popular acronym some years ago, double income, no kids, because kids bog you down. We live in a narcissistic, hedonistic culture, and kids get in the way. Uh, Whereas if you're living in an impoverished nation, you're thinking, well, I've got 17 kids, maybe one or two of them will actually make something of themselves and be able to look after me in my old age. Uh, so Jim Malk is writing that Ukraine showed us that bird poop isn't the only thing that drops out of the air. Claude Jamal goes on to say, kind of since old black women aren't doing black jobs, aka mammies and nannies, the birth rate has decreased. Uh, if someone has the means, I mean, the biggest thing that changed the entire Western world was the introduction of birth control, the birth control pill. That completely, most of the people living in Canada and the US today, the birth control pill has been around our entire lives, and so we just assume this is the way life is. And for all of human history, only the last 50, 60 years has the birth control pill been a reality against how many thousands of years of recorded history? And we tend to think our times are normal. Our times are an aberration against the longer term historical trends. Um, anyway, uh, so Jim Alec is writing, they travel to places they call crap holes for vacation, aka fun. Something very evil about that. And Koji Malik then goes on to say maybe the world doesn't need as many people on it. Oh, where in and around 1970, a book came out called The Population Bomb, and I think what we're seeing is just a ratcheting up of things that have been going on since that book came out. So this idea that the planet is overpopulated is is common. And what are you going to do about it? Some of you may know about a site called Deagle, Deagel, Deagle.com, that had population forecasts. And I became aware of it back in 2020. And it was still on the web back then. You could still look at it. And they had the current populations for a country like the US, which back in 2020 was 320, 325 million. Then they had their projection for what the population would be in 2025, this year. And Deagle's projection for the United States of America was 140 million, some insanely low number compared to what it is now. Canada back then was, 33, 34 million. We were projected to be 17, 16 million, basically cut in half. The only countries that seem to be maintaining themselves are countries like China. So, and Danny's writing that the demic prefix plan, that it was a compliance test. I'm not going to argue with you at all. And Koji Malik is expressing the opinion that replacement rate is about money. A lot of things in this world for a lot of people come down to money. I'm gonna end the stream now. Gonna head to bed. Not sure when my next content will be going up, but in any case, going to try and continue with this. Saturdays are current events, what's happened the past week, and the big events now. For my money, biggest event in the world is happening between Israel and Iran, and I think in the coming days, weeks, months, I don't think it's going to take a year. We're going to see other players get involved. Syria, Turkey, who knows? Uh, then, and the second big event is the No Kings protest in the U.S. against the backdrop of the big military parade. The U.S. is incredibly divided right now. Those are the two big news stories as I see them. And we will see what happens in going forward. But we are living in interesting times. I'll end my video with the blessing I like to give. Because haven't talked much. Danny did put up the message that Jesus is King, and He is. And I'll remind you of the words that Aaron spoke over God's covenant chosen people. And those words were these. He said, "May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord grant you peace." If you want to read the actual blessing, it's in Numbers, end of chapter 6, if memory serves. And I give a redacted version, shortened version. But anyway, we'll see y'all in a night or two. I'm sure I'll have something to say between now and Wednesday. Wednesday will be a faith-based message. Saturday nights will be a look back at the week. So good night. Thank you for watching, guys. We'll talk to y'all later. God bless.